In the summer of 1241, a chilling announcement reverberated from the halls of the University of Paris. The Chancellor declared that a savage people, originating from the farthest reaches of the East, had descended upon the world, leaving a trail of carnage in their wake. A formidable nation, one that no other had yet managed to withstand, was sweeping across the land. He warned, with a tone as sharp as lions' teeth, that these merciless invaders spared no one, advancing relentlessly westward. These foreign marauders had already overrun Poland and seized control of the kingdom of Hungary. Now, they stood poised at the borders of Germany, their sights set on obliterating the remaining Christian peoples of Western Europe. To compound the dire situation, the Pope had recently passed away, leaving Europe without a guiding hand to rally resistance. These mysterious invaders were the Mongols, led by Batu, the grandson of Genghis Khan, seeking answers in the Bible and ancient prophecies. Many Europeans succumbed to panic, convinced that the end of the world was at hand. And, in all fairness, for a considerable number of them, the Mongol conquests did indeed bring about their world's end. However, in early 1242, Batu's forces, which had crossed the Danube and appeared to be maintaining their unstoppable advance into German territory, halted with surprising abruptness, even more perplexing. The entire army turned and marched out of Europe, disappearing deep into the steppes, leaving behind a great historical mystery in their wake. In this episode, we will delve into the various modern historical theories that attempt to explain why the Mongols withdrew from Europe. While we may be born too late to witness a convoy of humans and horses as a truly alien and mysterious force, and perhaps too early to actually encounter extraterrestrial mysteries, we are perfectly positioned to explore the alien cosmos through our sponsor, Star Trek Fleet Command. It's a 4X MMO designed for desktop and mobile, where you gather ships and officers to command Starfleet, the Federation's cosmic navy of explorers, fighters, and diplomats. And you'll need to be all three as you expand your influence, build your base, bring in legendary officers to lead your crews, and deal with the threats waiting for you in the unexplored reaches of the galaxy. They've just added a new multiplayer wave defense mode where you team up with other crews to hold off increasingly intense attacks. More broadly, they're adding new officers and missions as part of the Enterprise arc, adding content from Star Trek Enterprise, including, of course, the NX-01 Enterprise itself. You can also get the game on mobile devices featuring crossplay with your desktop version, so you can keep playing whenever you want seamlessly. The best way to get started is to use our link below or the QR code on screen to get the game. And remember the code warp speed. Use it in-game to get 10 shards of Kirk for free if you're a new player. So get the game, explore the galaxy, join or even lead alliances of other players, and get an authentic Star Trek experience with Star Trek Fleet Command. After overrunning Eastern Europe and occupying Hungary for a year, the Mongol withdrawal was so unexpected that many people initially doubted its sincerity. King Bela IV of Hungary, who had fled from the pursuing Mongols to the islands on the coast of the Adriatic Sea, remained offshore for months, sending scouts to confirm the news. So suspicious was he. But it was true. Batu and his entire army had moved eastward through Bulgaria, returning to the great Eurasian steppes stretching from Ukraine to Mongolia. Batu's inexplicable withdrawal was often attributed to a miracle. Christendom had been saved from destruction. Certainly, no great crusading army had confronted the Mongols and driven them away in a decisive battle. Rather, Batu's army had left at a relaxed pace and in good order. For those in Eastern Europe who had experienced Mongol tactics firsthand, the withdrawal was suspected to be a large-scale feigned retreat. Local people expected the Mongols to return, since Batu's new vassals from Kievan Rus' reported that the Mongols still planned to conquer the whole world, including Europe. Despite what anyone imagined, the 1242 withdrawal was not a feigned retreat. Batu, as senior prince of Genghis Khan's ruling dynasty, dismissed the other princes, and established the Volga River as a base for his immense herds and followers. Many other Mongol princes set up camp in territories appointed for them deep in Inner Asia, east of the Ural Mountains and Aral Sea. The bases of Mongol power were now thousands of kilometers from the heart of Christendom. So what happened? It is hard to say. On campaign, the Mongols kept their military plans top secret. For medieval authors, the events of Batu's invasion were so linked with destiny that there was no need to fully investigate the matter. God had willed the Mongols to come and willed them to leave. Even up to relatively recent times, historians were not overly curious about why the withdrawal happened. There is an irony that an event that is often said to have saved Europe seldom gets more than a sentence or two of explanation in history books. Today's investigators, who possess the ability to look at a huge range of texts, archaeological findings, and environmental evidence, have tried to solve the mystery and explain what motivated Batu. But despite the many pieces of evidence, historians have never been able to arrive at a consensus on what caused the Mongolians to abandon a campaign that seems to have been going spectacularly well for them. Debate about the mystery continues 800 years later. 4 basic theories gradually emerged for why the Mongols left Europe in 1242. Historian Greg S. Rogers categorized and analyzed them. He calls the most common and popular one the political theory. It holds that Europe was saved by the death of the great Khan Ögedei in December 1241. According to this theory, messengers must have reached Europe the following spring and given news to Batu, forcing the campaign's leaders, Genghis Khan's grandsons, to return to Mongolia to choose the next Khan at a great assembly. The second broad type of explanation for the withdrawal is the geographical theory, or perhaps better termed the ecological theory. The common thread is that the Mongols encountered difficulties with the environment in Europe during the invasion, either insufficient grassland for their horses and livestock or extreme weather. This environmental problem caused them to decide that the region could not be occupied or incorporated into the Mongol Empire. The third argument is what Rogers calls the gradual conquest theory, but which could also be termed the limited goals theory. The explanation behind any variation of this theory is that the Mongols never planned to occupy any part of Europe when they overran it in 1241. Either they wanted to soften it up to make a later conquest possible, or they merely invaded to chastise King Bela IV of Hungary for harboring nomadic human refugees that Batu considered his legal subjects. In that scenario, the attacks on Hungary's neighbours would have been to prevent them aiding the Hungarian king, with their mission accomplished sufficiently. This theory holds the Mongols called off their campaign and withdrew. The fourth and final explanation is the military weakness theory, which holds that the Mongols withdrew because they were simply unable to accomplish the conquest of Europe. The war that brought the Mongols to Latin Europe started already in 1236. Over 5 years, they conquered the Volga Bulgars, most of Kievan Rus, the Alans, and the mighty Kuman Kipchaks. By the time they reached Europe, they would have been weakened. Likewise, strong resistance that they encountered in East Central Europe in 1241-42 could have at last convinced Batu to call off the campaign completely, evacuating Europe without even leaving behind a rump force to garrison hundreds of kilometers of overrun territory. It is worth exploring the evidence for and against each theory, as all are plausible and have some evidence to support them, which is why they have persisted. However, they cannot all be simultaneously correct, because they contradict each other on key points, like whether the Mongols even intended to conquer Europe in the first place, and whether the campaign of 1241 was one of the most successful in history, or a strategic quagmire for Batu's forces. The political theory that Ögedei Khan's death saved Europe and stopped the Mongols' westward advance has been the most popular explanation with historians for the better part of a century, and is the one you'll most likely find in a general history book. Ögedei's death on December 11th was followed by the Mongols suddenly starting to withdraw eastward at the end of March. Suggesting there was a connection between the two events, John of Plano Carpini, a papal ambassador who journeyed in 1246 to the horde of Ögedei's son and successor, Guyuk, in Mongolia, heard that the Mongols had planned to campaign in Europe for 30 years, but the great Khan was fatally poisoned. So they had to retreat. Ominously, the new Khan planned to resume the war against Europe soon. For historians, the timeline and well-known testimony of Carpini long sufficed to explain the withdrawal. Problems with this explanation appeared when scholars of different Eurasian languages began to compare notes. A report on the campaign, written originally in Mongolian, stated that the Mongolian forces in Europe didn't know Ögedei was dead when they started to withdraw eastward, and could a messenger have reached Hungary from Mongolia in less than 4 months in the dead of winter? Medieval travelers like Carpini describe much longer travel time frames. Would messengers even be dispatched right away from Mongolia by Batu's rivals to alert him that the throne was vacant? Most problematically, Batu never returned to Mongolia to elect a new Khan. Later, he even made excuses not to go, suspecting a trap by his rival Guyuk. Thus, new theories were offered in the 20th century, including the ecological theory originally proposed by Hungarian historian Denis Sinyó in the 1970s. The theory was that it was simply impossible for the Mongols to conquer Europe or permanently occupy Hungary, the last piece of the Eurasian steppe belt, because it simply did not offer enough pasturage for the Mongol horses. Based on American horse breeding statistics and the assumption that each Mongol warrior needed at least 3 horses, Sinyó claimed that the largest Mongol army that the Great Hungarian Plain could support would be 68. Men. Decades later, he revised it to 83,000 men with 5 horses each. Problematic. However, real numbers of livestock recorded on Hungary's pastures in the early modern age suggest that it could actually support millions of animals. Moreover, King Bela IV wrote that Hungary had proven dangerous, suitable for sustaining the Mongols' herds during the year-long occupation. A more recent environmental hypothesis used climate data to show that 1242 had an unusually wet and cold spring. Perhaps the Mongols had trouble advancing in the mud and feeding their animals, withdrawing because of the weather. Moreover, medieval sources document a serious famine in Hungary in 1242. The problem with this explanation is that the Mongols conquered much tougher and varied environments than continental Europe. It's hard to imagine a spell of cold rain and muddy roads would have deterred nomads from Mongolia who had traversed the deserts of Inner Asia and who were simultaneously finding ways to conquer the forest zone of Russia and the humid hills of southern China. Also, famine is only documented among the Hungarian commoners who were unable to plant or harvest crops during the invasion, but never among the Mongols. Yet, when the Mongols did experience famine and exposure in the Carpathian Mountains during a much later invasion in 1285, any chroniclers who wrote about that invasion noted it. Turning to the gradual conquest theory, it is supported by the fact that the Mongols often invaded states repeatedly before they conquered them. Like the Jin dynasty of northern China or Armenia, the Mongols' campaign in Europe was highly successful in terms of battlefield victories, like at Legnica in Poland and Mohi in Hungary, and then they left voluntarily. So it is tempting to infer that they were not planning to conquer Europe in 1242. They may just have wanted to soften it up for a later conquest. Or they considered the task complete after they successfully drove the Cuman refugees out of Hungary. Perhaps the campaign was just to secure the western borders of their main target, the Cuman nomads of the Pontic steppe. Documents composed in Mongol courts named Hungary as a main target for conquest. And we know that the Mongols repeatedly demanded submission from Hungary and other European powers, both before the invasion and after the withdrawal. The Khan directly threatened the Pope to surrender or die in an ultimatum of 1246, signing the letter with his official seal. It is surprising, too, that so many Genghisid princes took part if it was just a raid with limited goals, and then set up a local government and tax administration in Hungary, as was documented by one of their prisoners there. The creation of such administrations usually meant permanent conquest. Regarding the final explanation, the military weakness theory, there are good reasons for modern historians to dismiss it. It was popular with nationalistic writers in the 19th and early 20th centuries, who would insist that it was their own nations which threw back the Mongols. Many myths created about great victories that never happened were used to inflame national feeling. Austrians were sure it was their dukes who struck fear into Batu. Poles were sure it was their dukes, and Russian and Hungarian authors suggested their ancestors' sacrifices stemmed the Mongol advance and shielded Western Europe. Claims that the Mongols fled from Europe in defeat are the wishful thinking of later authors. In fact, they won the major clashes and sacked important cities. Yet, we shouldn't overlook evidence that they faced major military challenges in the campaign. Carpini mentioned a special graveyard in Mongolia for those that died in Hungary, because so many perished there. Official Mongol texts, like the biographies of Subutai, confirm European claims that Batu's forces were close to retreat during the battle with the Hungarians at Mohi in 1241. A Templar knight tells of the bodies of Mongols who later died from wounds suffered at the Battle of Legnica, littering the roads from Poland to Hungary. Writings across Asia and even Coptic Egypt echoed rumors that the Mongols had suffered setbacks in Europe. Batu had numerous unconquered enemies still to face in 1242, and his forces had difficulties taking strategically situated stone castles. Worse, they failed to capture Belafort because he took to a warship. Batu may have concluded a continued advance would stretch his forces too far. Years after the withdrawal, a European friar visiting Mongolia heard that the Khan's shamans forbade a return to Hungary because of bad omens. The fact that history enthusiasts are still arguing today about the reasons for the sudden Mongol withdrawal in 1242 is something that would have given Batu great satisfaction. The Mongols strove to be very secretive with their military plans, not revealing anything to outsiders who could inform the enemy. If we still cannot be certain of why they left Europe, then this stands as a testament to the effectiveness of the leaders that conducted the Great Western Campaign. The four major theories cannot be reconciled into a single tidy explanation, but they all reflect historical reality, at least in some sense. If the death of Ögedei did not cause the Mongols' withdrawal, it at least prevented them from returning to Europe for a long time, owing to the conflict between Batu and his cousin Guyuk. If the environment of Europe did not make a Mongol conquest impossible, its forests, fortified hilltops, and coastlines meant major challenges. If the Mongols did not start their campaign in 1241 with limited goals, altering their campaign objectives according to the strategic realities they encountered in the field was not uncommon of them. And although the victories claimed by 19th century nationalist poets are only fantasies, Batu's army experienced heavy losses. Nevertheless, significant limitations in terms of manpower, artillery, and ships probably made a quick and easy conquest of Europe impossible. We hope this video has helped satisfy our audience's curiosity on one of medieval history's greatest mysteries. For more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and press the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. Recently, we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos. Learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.